Welcome to Session 4 of the 2021 UPRT Safety Summit for Professional Pilots Worldwide. My name is Paul B.J. Ransbury. I'm the CEO of Aviation Performance Solutions. And it's my great honor today to be joining Dr. Janeen Kochan in this session, which is, I think, going to be very, very interesting and informative for everybody on the event today. Janeen's going to be talking about human factors aspects of UPRT, the data. And I can't think of anybody more qualified and articulate on this topic than Janeen is. So quickly on her background before we call her in here to join us and to go through the presentation today. And of course, at the end, we'll have a Q&A. A little bit on Janeen. Very impressive lineup of credentials for this event today. She is a former Boeing 767 captain and human factors instructor for a major air carrier in the United States. She has a PhD in applied experimental and human factors psychology from the University of Central Florida, a Master of Science in Industrial and Systems Engineering from Ohio State University, and at Ohio State, her BA was in pre-medicine and psychology. Her primary research interests include unexpected events, pilot expertise, human performance, decision-making, stress and fatigue, automation, workload, resource management, and training. And she's also a flight instructor and a designated FAA examiner. Janeen is also an adjunct assistant professor at the Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University worldwide. So, Janeen, it's just wonderful to have you here, and I'm just excited about this topic. So let's go ahead and get going. I'm going to hand it over to you. Why don't you take it from here?
Thank you for that introduction, BJ. And it's a pleasure to be here with my esteemed colleagues today talking about the human factors aspects of upset prevention and recovery training. My name is Janeen Kochan, and today we'll be talking about three sections. First, I'm going to talk about unexpected events in the process of surprise and what that has to do with flying airplanes. And once I give you that background, we'll take a look at some data. So basically, what I'm doing is presenting data that is going to support the upset prevention and recovery training process. And I'll talk about how that data supports the training methodologies for UPRT. And I will use the acronym UPRT, although often don't use acronyms. So first, let's start with some background, some unexpected events and process of surprise. Why do we care about unexpected events when we're talking about flying airplanes? Well, primarily because unexpected events most often create surprise, which can interrupt ongoing processes and affect how we respond to those unexpected events. So I want to give you a feel for that topic before we talk about what pilots find surprising and unexpected. So first, as far as a definition of unexpected events is concerned, this came from a research project, and it's a little academic, but let me explain it to you. So for the purposes of a pilot, an unexpected event is an event that is incongruent with expectations as determined by base rate probabilities. In other words, how often does this event occur? The contextual information available. Under what circumstances am I experiencing this event? And it can be normal, abnormal, or emergency in nature. In other words, something normal can still be unexpected if it occurs at the wrong time. So it could be a normal, abnormal, emergency in nature, and it may also be something that happens frequently, infrequently, or is quite novel, such as in the case of the US Air 427 rudder event. Noteworthy also is part of the definition of an unexpected event is the absence of an expected event. So for example, in the ABX Air 827 accident, the crew was expecting a stick shaker or a stall warning alert and did not receive it, which was unexpected. The same thing might happen if you put your landing gear handle down. You expect the gear to go down, but it doesn't. So that would be something that was the absence of an expected event. So how do unexpected events affect us when we're flying? Well, this is a model. I'm very fond of models, and some of you may have seen this model before, but I'm translating it into pilotese today. And then this is what generally would happen once we experience an unexpected event. And in the academic terms, you talk about the assessment of a situation. We talk about one's ongoing schema, what's going on in your head at the time. We're going to check the event against that schema. We're also going to verify whether it's a large enough discrepancy to do something about it. And doing something about it is changing the script that we're running, or known as script switching process. But in the easier language, let's look at it this way. We're flying along and something gets your attention that you were not expected. And what your brain does, it says it catches a glimpse of this something, and it says, well, is it really of interest? Or, gee, I thought I saw something, but it didn't really get my attention because it didn't meet a threshold of, is that discrepancy less than my normal threshold? If it's not, you'll just come through this feedback loop and keep paying attention to things, keep flying your airplane. If this discrepancy is greater than your threshold, you'll say, well, yes, that's something of interest, and we'll go on to the next step, part C, and we'll take a look and say, well, just how weird or discrepant is this situation? And we'll look around for more information to verify or not verify whether it's something that needs to be addressed or not. Let's say a bird flies by your window and you caught a glimpse of it, and your brain kind of thinks, well, it's not really anything of interest. Or it might say, I'm going to look further because maybe that's traffic. I think it might be traffic, so we'll try to get more information. And then we will either verify or not verify what it is. If we verify that it's something that needs to be addressed, we'll go to part D and we'll say, maybe I should do something. So that something is now changing how we're processing information, our activated schema, if you will, and we're going to have to do some action. Now, I'd like to point out, that was an unexpected event, by the way, and I had to quickly go through this process and put my keyboard back. So action could also be inaction. Our action could be, we're not going to do anything at this point in time, and we'll come back and we'll continue in our observational loop here. But it could also be that, first of all, we're going to fly the friendly airplane. We're going to maintain positive aircraft control, communicate, run a checklist, troubleshoot, maybe gather more information, or if necessary, recover from an aircraft upset. But by this time, we're going to do something. Okay. So this is the basic idea, like, okay, tell me something I don't know about information processing, right? Well, what I want to show you is a detailed explanation of this same process. Because from this detailed model, and once again, I realize it's quite busy and there's a lot of information on here, but here's the model parts that I just showed you here, the simplified model, and so they're over here. And so for each of these parts, this is the detail. And so for part A, these are the details. So I'm going to go through the detailed model a little bit as well. So let's go back here and say, look at our process. So something has gotten your attention. And if we correlate that to the detailed model, that is cue processing. That is the cues and clues available in the environment that we're paying attention to. Okay, so we go to the next step. Is that something of interest? It correlates to appraising the unexpectedness of that event. The same with, we go to our part C. Is it strange enough that I might have to be doing something about it? And this is the area that's important. Once we we appraise the unexpectedness and we say, yeah, this is something that's pretty weird. I need to take another look. Right then, good grief, our normal processes are interrupted, just like that. Again, when I push the back button accidentally, our normal processes are interrupted and our brain starts functioning or processing information through a state of surprise, which has affective, cognitive, and behavioral effects. Okay. So this unexpected event, this surprise that we have encountered, now has our cognition behaving differently than under normal circumstances. So this is quite important. The other is, in this step, we will now put our attention to the unexpected event, which we talk about this sometime as tunnel vision. You know, the master warning light comes on and sometimes people will just freeze looking at it. Okay, so we're going to reallocate our attention here. Now, as we take a look at the last step, maybe I should be doing something. This is when we come down to having to adjust our ongoing script. We need to shift this script. And let's just say we're coming into land and we think we see some traffic that might be pulling onto the runway, and we go through this process, and that's unexpected. But now I see that traffic hasn't stopped. Looks like he might be coming across the runway, and I'm running the I'm going to land script, and now I have to say, on the other hand, I think I need to do something. I'm going to need to go around, and I'm going to have to shift my script to my go around mode and action a go around versus a landing. So the process is ongoing, and it gets down to this action event. I want to bring to your attention just a little bit more of this model before we move on. And first of all, are factors that mediate and moderate all of this behavior, or all of this information processing and behaviors, which would include such things as fatigue, stress, attentional resources available. So those overlay all of this information processing, if you will, and affect how well we do our job. It affects human performance. We also have other factors, numerous factors on this right-hand side here that affect our expectations of what's going on. Our biases affect what we expect to happen. The context, the framing affects our expectations. So this model is comprehensive in covering all aspects of what happens when humans are faced with an unexpected event, how it creates the process of surprise. So why is that important? Because we now know that surprise and unexpectedness are important, and it's a major aspect of decrements in performance. So we went to find out what pilots find surprising, and this is how our data is going to support this model and also support the training that we do in upset prevention and recovery. So I've got a couple studies. I'm going to go through them quickly. I'd like to advise that these are published research studies. Some of them are already published. Some will be published shortly, and would be available to you if you want some details about these. I'm not going to give a full research briefing on these. I just want to get the idea across that of what we're looking at here. So we did a database study looking at ASRS, NTSB, and other databases, analyzed the reports looking for what pilots found surprising and unexpected. And not so surprisingly, they're saying that they found their aircraft position, like where they were in space, to be unexpected or surprising. Air traffic control instructions and their actual aircraft state to be surprising. And this was in 2004, and this was in an all-pilot population, both general aviation and air carrier. Then we did a second database study, and we looked at even more reports to verify what we had already found. And again, our aircraft position, air traffic control, and aircraft state were in the mix. But we also had a very large number of other crew member actions. In other words, what my other crew member did surprised me, and it was unexpected. Okay, so we've got these other factors involved. Then we went and talked to pilots themselves and said, in these interviews, once again, these were all pilots, general aviation through air carrier. And we found that when we asked them, what are the two most surprising events that have happened to you in flying? When we categorized their answers, we found aircraft state, aircraft position, and system status. So once again, the event reporting, accident and incident event reporting, is supported by what pilots say. Oh, yes, we find this stuff unexpected. And oh, by the way, when we get surprised from an unexpected event, we can have an unwanted outcome that will end up in an incident or an accident report. We asked for recommendations how they might better deal with these unexpected events. And this is once again in 2004. And the pilots themselves came up with remaining alert and vigilant at all times. Here we go with situation awareness and workload management, higher training standards, and training specifically for unexpected events. So can we really train specifically for unexpected events, or can we train for better performance when faced with an unexpected event, would be my question. We've just run a study this past year. It's still ongoing, but I wanted to share some preliminary information from our airline pilot study, or our pilot study that is part 121, 135, and 91K pilots only in the US. We asked them the same question. What do you find to be most surprising or unexpected in your flying? And we categorized their answers, and lo and behold, here we go again. Aircraft systems events, environmental events, weather and wind. And here they also added passengers and personnel. And I think we may see that also go up, although this study was conducted before, pre-COVID. So I don't think we really were getting the brunt of the passenger interruptions or the passenger unexpected events at that point in time. I also would note that our technology events, navigation, are not as high as we would expect. But I think as technology improves, we're going to see more of that. And then the last thing we have here is we again asked what is important in dealing with unexpected events from this subject matter expert population that we had. And they told us first and foremost, domain expertise. You've got to be able to fly the airplane. You've got to be able to fly the airplane. Secondarily, they came up with CRM skills such as situation awareness, workload management, et cetera. And what I will do is just take a quick look at how those pilot responses feed into the model that I presented earlier. Whereas, for example, situation awareness is really queue processing. It is maintaining vigilance, what's going on in your environment. We can see that workload management is part of the script processing. How much residual mental space do you have available given your current mental workload? And then if we look at domain expertise, being able to fly the airplane, this is where it comes down to action selection and execution. This is being able to fly the airplane, maintain positive aircraft control, maintain your flight path, recover from an upset if necessary. So if we look at how do these data support the training methods, number one, surprising events can and do have a negative effect on the outcome of a flight. And UPRT training strategies help mitigate or allow for pilots to learn how to control the effects of surprise, which is is of the utmost importance if you want to improve pilot performance. Certain factors are consistently involved in surprising and unexpected events, but UPRT allows pilots to be and trains pilots to be more aware of what could be perceived as surprising. And there is no simple formula explaining unexpected and surprising events. We have lots of data. We know what causes brains to be surprised. We know what pilots think are surprising or unexpected events. But what the benefit of UPRT is that it can help inoculate pilots against the negative impacts of the unexpected. And then finally, potentially any factor or combination of factors can create a surprising or unexpected event that leads to an unwanted aircraft state. All of this can be corrected with knowledge, skills, and practice found in UPRT. And thank you very much for your attention. And back to you, BJ.
Well, Janeen, great having you here. So such a good presentation. And I think everybody really enjoyed it. There's a lot of people saying, ooh, human factors, my favorite in the stream. So we got a lot of human factors experts here today. So maybe before we go to questions, did you have any additional comments or anything you'd like to chat about before we do that?
I would like to bring in, thank you, BJ, and I would like to bring in that the previous presentations, I see such a thread weaving through the different perspectives and the different experts that are sharing their knowledge with us. And I really have found that putting this all together and the format is great. I mean, being part of it is wonderful, but even, as a participant watching, we're always learning something. And the other experts are bringing in perspectives that all fit in the piece of the puzzle here.
Yeah, no, I think that's a really fair observation. It is kind of nice to have different perspective, different dimensions. And I think the common thread, though, is the human factor element across it, which is what makes the training platforms or mitigations both ineffective in some areas and not so much in the others. So I think it's a really critical concept. So I've been watching the comment stream going here, and understandably, as we all do, there's often a confusion between startle and surprise. Do you want to go ahead and maybe explain that before I go to the first question?
That's a very common misconception, and often they are considered the same process and have the same outcome as far as human behavior and human performance is concerned. And simply put, startle is a physiological reaction that, frankly, we don't have control over what happens to us as far as when we have a certain threshold that is considered a startle. However, surprise is, we can have surprise with startle. Most often, if you're startled, it will also create surprise, but we can have surprise without being startled. We can be surprised at something that's going on without having had to have a start, is the term, and will not have that same physiological process. That's why I tend to focus on the process of surprise, not necessarily the startle effect, because they are two different things. And we often, say, well, we were startled, but we can also be surprised, which is not startled.
Awesome. Yeah, that really helps everybody understanding that. And it's something that I think even in our normal conversations, we continue to mix those up a little bit, but I think that's going to help. So let me go to that question now. So understanding that, here's a question from Samu. I'm going to go ahead and bring it into the stream here. And so is part C of the simplified model the same as fight or flight? The brain is analyzing until figuring out what to do. And furthermore, focusing to a wrong issue, the root cause may be left unresolved. Would you like to address that?
Yes, that is a great question. And part C is basically the verifying, like I said, well, how weird is it? Verifying whether the discrepancy, the event is something that needs to, we really need to take care of or do something about. And that has a lot of subparts that, one of the things we look at, and only one of the factors of that part C might be considered fight or flight. And that's when our brain is evaluating whether it's going to be harmful to us. That's when that particular feature of our human information processing is going to be triggered. But in the Part C, there's additional, it depends on, what is the schema that's going on at the time. So that evaluation goes beyond the fight or flight aspect, but the fight or flight is in that Part C. And if you look at the expanded model, you can see the other sub-factors that are involved in that, verifying whether the unexpected event is really something I need to do something about, or am I just going to continue monitoring the situation?
And I know it's always uncomfortable to bring an eye chart to a presentation,
Yes.
but I think it was important to show that, to see that it is a well thought out process, that there's a decision matrix in there, what's going to happen next. So one question I have as we start getting close to the end. So in upset prevention and recovery training, as part of the startle surprise training that's inherent to it, do you think that training that's a benefit in UPRT can transfer to other areas of aviation training, such as emergencies and so forth?
Absolutely, positively, yes. And the example I will use is, for example, in the airlines, for decades, we have had special purpose operational training for TCAS events, for for wind shear events, for TCAS events. And if we look at the initial reaction to pilots to those alerting systems, it's, traffic. Oh, now you may, if you haven't been paying attention to your situation and you see, and you've already been watching this piece of traffic and you expect to sooner or later get that warning, you won't be as startled, but you're flying along and really haven't been paying attention, and all of a sudden you get that traffic. So that same reaction, the ability to quickly shift the script that is running, the everyday flying across the country script, and deal with the situation at hand, the unexpected event, from an information processing human performance standpoint. Yes, the UPRT training does that, because even though there's different events that are trained, the whole idea is it's usually things initially that have not been seen before. So yes, and we could generalize our surprise training, if you would, instead of having to do specific events, because we don't know what the next event is going to be, whether, and what alerting system are we going to have that is now going to generate surprise.
Awesome. I was just about to close up, but Roberto made from YouTube, made an interesting observation. And I think that it's about automation. And we know how automation mismanagement is a big concern in upset prevention recovery training. Let me just bring his point in, because I think he was hoping to see that in the model. Do you want to address it? It says, "Hi, Janeen. Quite surprised that the data does not show automation status, i.e. whether the autopilot is engaged or not, as one of the highest items on the pilot's interviews list." Any comments on that?
I do. I have comments, and there are research studies published by Volpe Transportation that we have actually analyzed ASRS reports looking at the status of the automation. These are particularly focused on instrument flight procedure anomalies, where crews were surprised by an ATC vector or whatever. But that is some more detailed studies that have been conducted and are going on now. And that's a really good point, as far as something that we need to look into. And that feeds back to, I think, as our technology becomes more sophisticated, that's going to become more of an aspect of attention for research, which even begs the question more so that, as if we've already tried to prevent all of the things that could happen and they happen anyway, we still need to be able to take manual control of that airplane and recover. That is the bottom
Exactly.
line.
Exactly. So we think of recovery, although it's just one part of awareness prevention recovery, is that layer of redundancy that is there when everything else fails. So that's a great point to make. Well, wonderful, Janeen. Before we wrap up here, just remind everybody, if you want to go to the next live session, you need to head back to the event main page, refresh your screen. You'll see the new thread show up, and we look forward to seeing you there. Janeen, thank you so much for your time today. It's just always wonderful to learn from you and hear how you approach these concepts. So thank you for your time.
Okay. Thank you, BJ.
My pleasure. And thank you, everybody out there. Truly a worldwide event showing up here today. So thank you, everybody, for being here and taking your time out to listen to the presentation today. With that, we'll close out. Take care, everybody.